Do you ever read the Bible and have this gnawing sense that you're not living the way you could and should? That something is holding you back, holding you down. You look at how Jesus' disciples responded to him. You look at how the epistles call us to live, and you feel like you can't get there. It's like your faith isn't able to get off the ground in the way that it should be able to. I felt like that many times. And back in 2016, I went to see the movie Risen, which is about a Roman tribune who meets the resurrected Jesus, and his whole life turns upside down because he becomes aware of the truth and the reality that he's living in. And it just changes everything for him. And at the time, I was entangled in some habitual sins and had recently relapsed pretty bad. And I wasn't feeling too good about that. And when the movie got over, I sat there thinking to myself, what am I doing? What am I doing? I had this moment of clarity where the reality that we're living in sank in again. That the Son of God came into the world to save us, bring us into his kingdom. He suffered and died in order to rescue us. He rose again from the dead. And he is going to return any day in flaming fire with an army of mighty angels in glory to judge the world and to send every one of us to one of two places for eternity. That is the reality that we are in. And it sort of became new for me again there in the theater. And I sat there just astounded at how I could know that and yet respond so casually and continue in habitual sin for over a decade after coming to believe in Jesus and investing so much time into silly things that have nothing to do with God's kingdom, but which are really just about self-indulgence and enjoying my life. And I knew something wasn't right, but it was like something was keeping me grounded, you know. I couldn't break into a sprint and break free, and now it was starting to drive me nuts. And I was becoming more and more aware that the hourglass is running out, and I don't know how much time I actually have on the earth. What's wrong with us? Why do so many of us seem to never take flight in the way that Jesus and his apostles say we should be able to? Well, I think there are a number of reasons, but here's something to consider from the teachings of Jesus. In Jesus' explanation of the parable of the sower in Luke chapter 8, in talking about the seed that fell among the thorns, he says this, "And as for what fell among the thorns, there are those who hear, but as they go on their way, they are choked by the cares and riches and pleasures of life, and their fruit does not mature." In Mark's account of the parable, it's worded a little differently. He says, "They are those who hear the word, but the cares of the world, the deceitfulness of riches, and the desires for other things enter in and choke the word, and it proves unfruitful." I always read that parable in the past and thought of myself as the good soil that produces a crop that's fruitful. So I thought, well, I haven't fallen away from the faith. I still believe I'm connected to the body of Christ. I'm serving in some capacity. But notice that Jesus doesn't say that the seed and the thorns are the ones who stop believing. He doesn't say that they fall away from the faith. He says they're choked by the things of this life as they go on their way, and they don't mature. They prove unfruitful. They keep believing, but their lives don't change the way they should. It doesn't get where it should, go, because they're held back, they're choked, they're distracted by riches, pleasures, and other things of this world. I thought I was the good soil because I was using the normal Christian life that we see around us today as my litmus test. And in comparison to that, I felt that I was doing well. But then I started focusing more on the life that the New Testament shows us comparing myself to that. And I started learning more about the early church and what they were like and how they lived and other Christian movements throughout history like them. And I began to realize I've been using the wrong litmus test. Looking back on my life now, I think I actually looked more like the seed in the thorns than like the seed in the good soil. I still believed, and there had been some significant change in my life, particularly in the beginning of my Christian walk. But then something happened. My faith couldn't seem to get going like I knew it should be able to. I had hit a wall. What was holding me back? Well, I started thinking about my life sort of like as a pie chart. If I could look at it, as a pie chart, what would be taking up most of the space on the graph? What's taking up most of my life? Well, when I really thought about it, while I believe in Jesus and wanted to be devoted to his mission, what was really taking up the majority of my life, my time, my energy, was work, entertainment, trying to find a spouse, working on my physique, and enjoyable pastimes with my friends. For example, I realized I had been spending far more time on Netflix and going to the movies than on prayer or evangelism or serving the poor. I realized that most of my money went to feeding myself, having fun, and doing things simply for my own enjoyment. I did Christian activities regularly. I went to church on Sundays. I went to a small group meeting once a week or once every 2 weeks. I tried to talk to my friends about Jesus here and there. But I just mean in everyday life, when it came to what I was actually investing my life in on any given day, my real priorities, as revealed by what was actually filling the calendar, was work, the gym, movies and TV, eating, trying to find a spouse. As for what fell among the thorns, there are those who hear, but as they go on their way, they are choked by the cares and riches and pleasures of life, and their fruit does not mature. There are those who hear the word, but the cares of the world, the deceitfulness of riches, and the desires for other things enter in and choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. I think there was a direct connection between my priorities, my real priorities, and how I was spending so much of my life seeking after, trying to get the things that I wanted that had nothing to do with God's kingdom. There was a connection between that and my inability to break free from the sins that I was entangled in. When someone is really following Jesus in the sort of way that he intended, you can see it clear as day in their daily life, the things they actually do and invest their time and money into, and the things that they're unwilling to waste their life on. It's going to look very different than normal life in this world, or in this country. Imagine, for example, the difference between how Levi, the tax collector, was living before he became a disciple of Jesus and after. Right? It would be like night and day. We may not follow Jesus around literally today, as he's not a physical person we're following around today, but the difference between before and after should be just as drastic. The difference between how we live and what's normal in the world should be just as night and day. Or imagine if Peter or Paul or Timothy were here, and we could follow them around for a week. What would we see? We would see someone who is devoted to the mission of Jesus on a daily basis, and it would consume them every day. Timothy, for example, wouldn't be mixed up in all kinds of entertainment and recreational activities just because they're fun and he likes them. he wouldn't be working longer hours than is necessary to support a lifestyle, a quality of life that is higher than necessary. He'd work as much as he needed to in order to support himself and his family if he had one. And I think he'd want to have something left over to help the poor with. But you would see something very different than what our lives tend to look like when it would come to what he was doing with his free time. You would see someone who labors in prayer every day, who is devoted to evangelism, making disciples, serving the poor. And it wouldn't be something that he would do begrudgingly. He would be doing it passionately in love for God, in love for his neighbor, in the fear of God, and in a deep awareness of the fact that Jesus' return could be today. But here's what I think the difference is between Jesus' disciples who are bearing fruit, who are breaking free, who are not entangled in the cares of this world, the difference between them and the kind of lukewarm Christian that I've been for most of my life. It's that, for me, fun activities, things I enjoy, my dreams, my desires, they were the real priority, because I would make sure that those things got on my schedule. And Jesus' mission was something that I fit into the schedule when I could. Or it was often something that I would try to fit into the things that I liked doing, even though I knew that rarely ever had any kind of results. So Jesus' mission wasn't my real priority. But for someone like Timothy, it would be the opposite. Jesus' mission, the things related to it, that would be the real priority every day. You'd actually see him doing those things every day. And fun and enjoyment is the sort of thing that would be fit in if and when it can be. It would be the opposite. I think a lot of us, if Timothy were here, we would feel like he's a little bit too serious about this. We'd feel threatened by him because the way he'd be living, his devotion to Jesus and his mission, it would expose our lack of devotion to Jesus. Many of us, I think most of us, are entangled in the cares of this world, and I think there's often a direct link between being distracted by the things this world dangles in front of us and the habitual sins and internal problems that so many of us cannot seem to get free from, which hold us back and stunt our growth and keep our fruit from maturing. So I encourage you to look back at your life over the last year or the last few months or last few weeks and ask yourself, what am I actually doing with the time, the money, the energy that has been entrusted to me? And don't allow yourself to use what's normal in your church to tell you if you're living the way Jesus has called you to. Here's two scriptures for a little food for thought. First is from Hebrews chapter 12. Just the first couple of verses says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart." And one more from 2 Timothy 2, verses 3 through 7. Paul says to Timothy, "Join with me in suffering, like a good soldier of Christ Jesus. No one serving as a soldier gets entangled in civilian affairs, but rather tries to please his commanding officer. Similarly, anyone who competes as an athlete does not receive the victor's crown except by competing according to the rules. The hard-working farmer should be the first to receive a share of the crops. Reflect on what I am saying, for the Lord will give you insight into all of this." Thank you so much for watching. Hope it's been worth your time. God bless you.